Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Paul Sickle, good to talk to you, Scott.
Paul, how you been? It's been a little while.
There's been an election.
There has been an election. It's in the books, and as much as many Republicans around the country would like to think otherwise,
they want to stop the steal.
We have a president-elect, and it is Joe Biden.
There is no steal.
Basically, what it is, in a nutshell, is just the stages of grief for the GOP, where they are going through everything from denial to hopefully acceptance someday. I don't know. We'll see. But Meanwhile, the rest of us are moving on because Joe Biden won. He's up in the popular vote by 7 million votes. He won the Electoral College by 306 to 232, which is a number that sounds familiar from a previous podcast, Paul.
Yes, and it's the exact margin Trump won by 4 years ago. That's what you're talking about, right? You're not talking about anybody's prediction.
Anybody's prediction? No, not at all.
You're not being immodest in any way, are you?
I did call the number on our previous podcast, 306 to 232, but I did not call the states. I had Biden winning North Carolina, not Georgia, and I had Biden winning all of Maine, which makes up for the 16 votes there. So,
unlike you, I predicted every Biden victory. However, I also predicted some that ultimately went to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I did predict Georgia, I also predicted North Carolina and Florida.
It's obviously been an eventful month. We've been trying to record before this point, but it's challenging for various reasons, given the pandemic and everybody's got stuff going on in their lives. But anyway, it's been a crazy month because this president, we never really expected him to concede. Who would have thought that he would be like deferential and cordial and call Joe Biden and be like, Mr. President-elect, I wish you the best of luck and I will throw my support behind you, as the norms have been in the past. That's not this guy. This guy has just never in his career has shown an ounce of humility or the ability to just kind of do
the decent thing.
I don't know if it comes down to his parents never taught him how to lose gracefully. I don't know what it is, but a lot of Democrats, I think, were freaking out and they wanted the concession. They wanted that closure, move on to the next thing, like return to political norms. That's not what you're going to get here.
No, I don't think that many people are honestly that surprised, though.
It's a desire. You're not going to get it.
No, and you're not. And the other thing that's kind of frightening is that he's out there raising money on this.
They have all these lawsuits and court cases around the country, none of which are going anywhere. And I
don't know if I believe that he raised $207 million. I mean, that's what they are saying, but is that true since the election? That just seems like a lot of money to raise.
Well, he's raising a lot of money, and in the fine print, it makes it plain that it's not necessarily going to fight in the courts. It can be used to pay off debts of the campaign, and
No, but it makes him a power player going forward.
Sure. Well, that's been the speculation now, is that he'll announce like on Inauguration Day or something like that he's running in 2024.
Right. Well, and this gives him a platform. I mean, it allows him to buy time.
That's so far out. I'm not really willing to make a prediction on what things look like in 4 years.
He can run primaries against people.
What's going on in Georgia right now? Because we have the Senate elections down there taking place next month. So that's going to be something to watch. And apparently Trump is visiting Georgia this weekend to throw his weight behind Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Also, the Republican Party in Georgia is going through basically a civil war right now because the governor and the Secretary of State have certified that the election down there was clean. Everything is on the up and up. But Loeffler, Perdue, Trump, others in Georgia have turned their fire on the Secretary of State and the governor to call the election a fraud, as they're calling the elections fraud in states where they don't think they should have lost, i.e. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, etc. All these places where they've brought lawsuits that have not borne fruit at all.
What do you think is going to happen in those Senate races?
My gut says, the Republicans still have the edge. You do have a certain amount of turnout. I mean, what did Biden win in Georgia by, like 14,000 votes or something like that?
Yeah, out of 5 million.
And you'd expect that a certain percentage of those votes were from never Trumpers or people that just didn't vote for president or just couldn't stomach voting for Trump. Does that same motivation assert itself in a Senate race? I don't know. I think it'd be tough.
Plus, they don't have same-day registration, which I think.
Correct.
Which... Although a lot of people, we didn't this year, and I think that actually made our margin smaller in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
One might say COVID hurt Trump. However, I actually think he played COVID, given how bad it was. The way he got sick and had his little comeback, like, it was actually kind of effective, like, in a way I don't support. But the other thing he did was he made himself like the ally of small business and stuff.
Sure.
By saying everybody should reopen. That stuff plays.
In terms of Georgia, what I would say is the fact that Republicans are calling fraud and, again, are at war with the state government in Georgia. So how much does that depress the vote?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to depress the vote at all. Now, I think that when you have people that are pissed off and they feel like their vote is somehow being suppressed or whatever, they're not, like, when they're pissed off when they lose, they're more motivated than before to vote. We saw that with Democrats in special elections.
Yeah.
We saw it somewhat in 2018. It started to taper off a little bit, but we still saw it this last year.
Right.
And that's what carried us through, ultimately, I think, especially in suburban areas. The one thing is Trump's being a jerk is probably pissing off a lot of our voters as well. The safest way to keep those Georgia seats would have been for Trump to concede straight up and then be like, it was really close. I think America made a mistake because I'm Donald Trump. Like, that's what he could have said. I'll think about running again and I will support the transition, but I think that you're going to miss me sooner than you know. He could have done it like that. I mean, that's not in his DNA, but it actually would have been smart. It wouldn't have helped him raise his money, but it would have helped the Republicans in Georgia, I think, a lot, because then they would have been really pissed that they lost Georgia. They're pissed, but they're pissing off people that don't like Trump, too.
Yeah.
By being assholes, they're keeping the Democratic base ready to move. And I think that that may be very powerful and might actually lead to the Democrats winning. It'll probably come down to, like, the basic tactics that the campaigns use, their message discipline. If they connect to something that's happening Georgia-wide, not nationally necessarily. If it's that close, they'll come down to field tactics, things like that. So
January 5th, David Perdue versus John Ossoff, and then the Reverend Raphael Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler.
Yeah, the fact that they're incumbents probably does help. So I give the slight edge. I give the slight edge.
The incumbent always has the edge.
I think Warnock probably has a better chance.
You think so? I think Ossoff, given his name recognition and the fact that he's been able to kind of tar Perdue with the stock trading.
Well, that might be the thing.
I think the negatives for Perdue might be higher, but I don't know. Obviously, I'm not living in Atlanta or what the impact is.
Well, I look at race, and I think that race will help turn out black voters for Warnock, including black conservatives.
Sure.
And black conservatives were a thing this year. That is actually one of the biggest reasons Biden underperformed was actually non-white voters who decided to vote for Trump. And as a big surprise. Well, and I think that's one of the things pollsters got wrong.
Yeah. In terms of the lawsuits that are going on across the country, which they're filing lawsuits everywhere, and Giuliani's behind a lot of it, and it's just, I mean, we don't need to go into details because it's just go on Twitter and you'll see videos that are just ridiculous, whatever. So this week in Wisconsin, we had one of the lawsuits came here and it went right to the state Supreme Court, who rejected.
Several lawsuits came here, actually.
Right. But the Supreme Court rejected a request to revoke the certification of his loss to Joe Biden. And the decision was 4-3. Conservative Justice Brian Hagedorn, once again, as he has done a few times recently, joined 3 liberals on the court to strike down their petition.
Now, in her defense, I think Rogan Sachs says she may not have ruled that way, but Rebecca Bradley, of course, went off.
Well, Bradley and Ziegler, I mean, Bradley in particular is just, we knew going in when she was appointed and then won re-election that she was going to be Federalist Society style judge. You know? Yeah. Clearly, Hagedorn, at least initially, you know, he's only been in a short amount of time, but so far is kind of modeling himself after John Roberts in that at least it appears that he has respect for the institution and isn't just trying to be a toady.
Yeah, he's pretty partisan, but...
Yeah, he beat Lisa Neubauer in 2019, and it was very close. It was like within a percentage point. It was neck and neck, and he pulled it out. Obviously, if he had lost, it would be a 4-3 liberal court at this point.
Right. But, so, Scott, what do you think overall? You're pleased, obviously, with Biden winning. Are you disappointed overall with the election, or do you think that it turned out?
Disappointed in the Senate results. I think there were opportunities there. Disappointed in them losing House seats, but I think there's a lesson there.
Well, what is the lesson? Because I keep hearing different things. Like I keep hearing, well, we lost because we're all white voters and all that. But then when you look at most of the seats we lost, they're actually in Southern California, several in South Florida, one in New York City. So they weren't exactly rural districts that we were losing.
The Republicans, I think, did a good job of targeting certain districts. The socialist flag, all that stuff, that has an effect on Cuban voters in Southern Florida. If you look at Southern California and elsewhere, the fact that they were able to take slogans like defund the police, for instance, and kind of just raise that up as the Democratic Party platform de facto. And as we said previously, Obama has said as much. Promoting that slogan is a poor sales pitch. If you're going to convince people to get on board with police reform, defund the police sends the wrong message. And it doesn't matter what the details are at this point. The moment you throw that slogan out there, you're basically creating a wall. For anybody
once you have to start, somebody pointed this out, said this to me. Once you're starting to explain things, you know you're in trouble.
Pretty much. So stuff like that, I think, kind of plays into it. But yeah, the Senate elections, they're disappointing because they had opportunities in multiple states. And it's not only just Montana, but Joni Ernst looked like she was on the ropes. I mean, Susan Collins in Maine, she did not have a poll for like 6 months showing her in the lead. And somehow she pulled it off with flying colors.
Even though Biden did pretty well in Maine.
Some of that may come down to, again, the challenges with polling, as we mentioned.
The way I look at it is the defund the police thing was problematic with actually more working class African-American, Latinx voters as well as whites. It cost us in urban areas. I mean, that's why we lost that seat in New York City that includes Brooklyn, and parts of Brooklyn and Staten Island are now represented by a Republican. I mean, Staten Island's very Republican, but Brooklyn's not.
I don't want to limit it to just that one issue. It's not just that. There's a whole plethora of issues, and Democrats need to remind themselves that they are a big tent. There's room in the party for everybody from AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the Jeff Merkleys of the world. But there's also room for the Joe Bidens, and there's also room for the Ron Kynes, right? I mean, we need to make sure that there's space for dialogue and that one side or the other doesn't get shunned and shut out and not able to voice their viewpoints. And
so I'm actually a little more hopeful about things because I actually think the seats we lost are winnable again.
Yeah. The Senate map actually, I think, looks better in 2022 than it did in 2020.
Yeah.
We at a future recording, we can go over that, but
we have to talk about Wisconsin in 2022. We've got a governor's race, and we've got our own senator.
We have Ron Johnson.
Nobody's senator but ours.
Yeah. So we'll see who's interested in running for that.
I would like him to be nobody's senator.
Wasn't he running for one term? Wouldn't this be his third term?
Somebody was saying the family who owns that company that he worked for, they don't want him back at that company. They want him out in Washington.
Maybe that's the root cause there.
You know, obviously we're going to have our very exciting governor up for re-election, and that's going to be quite a challenge.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the legislature pretty much refuses to meet, so it's not like there's going to be much of a record to run on.
That's true, but Wisconsin governors
might help him.
Typically, Wisconsin governors have not done well. When there's a Democrat in the White House, the Democratic governor usually loses. Not saying that it's impossible, but it's going to be a challenge. And if we lose all branches of government again, that would be really unfortunate. Definitely. Hopefully, he can hang on. I mean, Evers actually did a little better in some of the rural areas than we've done on the presidential level. So he needs to do better in the suburbs. You know, Biden did great in the suburbs.
He did.
Biden did not do that well in the city of Milwaukee, relatively speaking. At least on the north side, he didn't do as well, or the south side. He did.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think
wider areas.
I think we expected him to do a little bit better in the city than he did.
You know, where Biden, the only county where he really lost a large amount of support was Kenosha. He didn't lose support relative to Clinton. Trump got way more votes than he did the first time.
Well, the election is over, as much as a lot of conservatives don't want it to be. You know, if you're watching,
I mean, it was over on November 3rd. I mean,
yes,
you know.
No, but Paul, like Trump won, and then like all these votes, I had won, and then all these votes came in. You know,
didn't we talk about that was going to happen because of the way
we did. We talked about it.
Many people did. I mean, there was a lot. It was
Lots,
well understood phenomenon.
lots of people are talking.
Yeah, the early vote being counted,
Yeah,
taking longer to count.
the-
Everybody knew that was going to happen.
the red mirage, because we're operating under the rules, at least in Wisconsin, that were passed by the Republican legislature and a Republican governor in recent years. So the votes that get counted first are the votes that get submitted on election day.
Yeah,
and then the mail-in ballots come later.
Scott and I did talk election night, even though we didn't podcast. And I remember we both knew we were going to carry Wisconsin. I mean, we were just waiting for the last votes to come in, and we knew we'd have it.
Yes.
I thought we'd do a little better because I didn't think Kenosha would go as badly as it did.
I was feeling very good about Wisconsin.
I also thought we'd do a little better in Milwaukee, too. But
yeah,
we did really well in Green Bay. And the other places we did poorly in were college areas because the campuses are so dead. We just didn't turn out the students. The UWM award was 15% turnout.
Right.
So, which is usually it's like 40%. So it was a pretty big drop, and it was a really big drop in Eau Claire, La Crosse. Even parts of Madison were not as good as they thought.
Begs the question, if things weren't shut down, what would it have looked like?
I mean, I actually think our field campaign would have gone a lot better. Sure, people blame Trump because of coronavirus, but people didn't like Trump to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think people who support Trump tended to think that you can't blame him for coronavirus. So I really don't think it hurt him nearly as badly as everybody thought.
Well, I think it was baked in. You know, but it's kind of removed almost from.
If you're a Trump supporter, you look at, okay, he signed these stimulus bills. The economy is not as bad as it could be, and he's doing what he can. If you don't like Trump, you look at it like, well, of course he would screw this up. Unfortunately, I think he did more than screw it up. He made it a lot worse than it needed to be. So, I mean, I guess it made us extra mad against him, but that doesn't mean I got to vote a second time.
All right, listeners. Well, I think that's a full lid.
More later, we'll start talking about if 2022 will become a midterm disaster. Shortly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's questions around the census. The Supreme Court is looking at that in terms of who gets counted and who doesn't, and we still don't know who's going to control the Senate. So there's a lot of stuff in motion. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Forward.
Go America.